So you want to get started on Airbnb, but you don't own a separate property that you can Airbnb out. This video is for you. Today's going to be a casual chit chat on my Airbnb journey and how I've explored literally all the ways that you can Airbnb. And it started off with having to sleep on my own couch while someone else slept in my bedroom. So if you're ready to get started on learning how to Airbnb without owning your own separate Airbnb rental, let's go. Hey guys, Diem here and welcome back to Lifestyle Leaps. This is a channel where we talk about how to eventually find financial freedom early and retire early from the rat race. That has always been my dream from the very first day that I graduated from college. And I have to tell you that dream has been supercharged by the power of real estate, short-term rentals and mid-term rentals, but it wasn't that easy to begin with. So I want to share with you the various different ways that I've used short-term rental to generate cash flow without actually owning separate Airbnb properties until later when I actually could afford to do so. So if you're ready, let's dive right into it. Now, the story is a little bit funny because actually I kind of did start out with my own Airbnb, and let me tell you how I did it. So after I had filed for bankruptcy in, 2014, because I was, brand new to being a business owner. I didn't have parents who were business owners. I wasn't exactly sure how to manage my money. So I filed for bankruptcy. And then after that, I was super intentional about learning about money and real estate. And so I began saving money. After 2 years, in 2016, I think in November, I bought an owner-occupied home using an FHA loan, and I actually didn't even qualify for the house on my own. My sister had to co-sign with me in order for me to qualify for the loan. But I had saved enough money, 3.5%. The price was $300 and something thousand. So it was only like $12,000 that I had to save, if I remember correctly. But this house was an hour away from where I lived, and that's a sacrifice that I had to make in order to get started in my real estate journey. There was nothing I could afford locally. So I moved an hour away up to this town called Ukiah. And it was a main house, and it had a granny unit in the back. At the time, the granny unit was occupied by a long-term tenant. I moved in, inherited the tenant, but eventually she moved out. So I had this unit that I wanted to make better cash flow than just the standard market rent. So what did I do? I turned it into an Airbnb. I began by just furnishing it. It was like a studio. So it didn't cost very much to furnish. You know, it had a kitchen and a bedroom and a space for a living area and a desk area, but that was pretty much it. So I furnished it and I rented it out by the night on the Airbnb platform, and that did really well. Over some time, I didn't want to live an hour away anymore, and I knew that the next house I was going to buy would be back home in my area in Santa Rosa. So in the meantime, while I continue to work up the ability to buy another house, I actually moved back to Santa Rosa. And I still owned the Ukiah house. So while I was living in the main portion of the Ukiah house, I had a roommate. I moved out and he had another roommate. So this property was now cash flowing. And I was paying rent in Santa Rosa, but almost like not that much considering I was getting a lot of cash flow coming from the Ukiah house. But I was in this super hustler mentality. And so I didn't want to just live in this 2-bedroom apartment without generating some income. So what did I do? I still lived there, but I listed my bedroom on Airbnb for by the night. And when guests would come to stay in my bedroom, I would be staying on the couch. You might be thinking this is crazy, but don't forget, this is how the Airbnb company started. It used to be like a home share platform, not as much as it is now where it's like a one person, one stay platform, right? I don't know if I said that right, but essentially it was more common back then to be sharing your space with other people. And of course that was listed on the listing. It was very descriptive about where they were going to sleep, where I would sleep when they're here, and the rent was really low. I don't remember how much it was, but it was probably like $50 a night or something with a $10 cleaning fee or something like that. So I would have people come and stay, and sometimes I would make friends with them and we would walk to downtown and have drinks and hang out. But I was a single girl, and sometimes I would host like grown men who were there for the freaking beer festival who would come back drunk, or two girls sharing the room and they would go to the beer festival and come back drunk. So it was a handful and sometimes a really funny experience. I remember one Christmas, the first Christmas I spent with my now husband, I was laying on the couch and he was laying on a cot next to the couch because I had a guest in the room. And I offered to take him to Hawaii at my expense. And he was like, what? No way. And it was just one of those really like symbolic moments in my life where it's like, yes, these sacrifices that I make give way for experiences that I value in a way that I can afford to do them. You know what I mean? Anyway, so that was my like crazy Airbnb experience. And then from there, I decided I was going to try out Airbnb arbitrage. So I looked on Craigslist to see if there were other local landlords who are renting who would be willing to let me Airbnb out their units. Now, I did present that very clearly to them because I don't want them to find out that I'm doing something that I'm not supposed to be doing. However, I did play it off more like a executive rental type thing, which was true. I still had a lot of people stay for work, but a lot of people also stay for pleasure. And so I got this guy. He had also a granny unit. He lived in the main house. I was in charge of the granny unit. I furnished it. I listed it on Airbnb, and my dad or my friend would come and clean the units. So that was very good. I cash flowed probably like $1,100 a month after expenses. So it was a pretty good investment because really it's just setting it up and then managing the guests, but I didn't have to clean it. And it was him. Now I got insurance for that place and named the landlord as a part of on the insurance. So everything was super legit. I don't know what happened in this scenario that made me decide to turn off this listing, meaning terminating the listing with the landlord and moving on. But it was literally in the nick of time because it happened like in February or March, and it was right before COVID. The landlord ended up buying all of my furniture, so I didn't have to move anything out. And I sold him for an extra like $200 or something, the existing listing that I had. So all the photos, the descriptions, he just had to copy and paste it. And so I got all my money back for the furnishing and I made good cash flow. He didn't get any renters for the next couple of months, but I see that that listing is still live on Airbnb. So I'm super happy that I was able to make some money for myself and that he learned a new business and a new way to pay his mortgage way better than if he had just a long-term renter. So that's kind of crazy, right? And then I bought my second home in Santa Rosa. I finally saved up enough money. And then at that point, it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. So I moved into the house and then I sectioned off 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom to make kind of like a suite with an outside entrance for guests. And that became an Airbnb rental as well. And then I actually sold my Ukiah property and I took that money to convert the garage at the Santa Rosa house into an accessory dwelling unit. So then that became a Section 8 rental. I lived in the middle and the back suite was an Airbnb rental. Since then, I've moved out into my current home and I also do the same thing. I sectioned off a room and bathroom for Airbnb. I created a junior accessory dwelling unit in a different part of the home because this home had more square footage, so I didn't need to give up the garage, which was great because we live in a courtyard, so we need all the parking. But in this scenario, I still am able to live there mortgage free. But now that other house in Santa Rosa, oh my goodness. So the garage makes $1,700 bucks a month. It's rented out on Section 8. And then the main house rents for $3,000 a month to midterm renters. And, but that ranges. Right now it's high, but I would say $2,500 to be fair. And then the back unit can rent up to $3,000 a month on Airbnb. Right now, Airbnb in my area has declined quite a bit, It could be just an economic thing. I expect that to rebound and recover, but can you do the math? So let's say 3,000, 3,000, 1,700. That's $7,700 on average. For a mortgage that is $3,000, you guys. Okay, so even with me paying the utilities, cleaners, landscapers, I am still cash flowing a ton. So this video, what I want to show you is you can start as low end and low budget as me with crashing on your own couch and having someone take over your room, to having a granny unit, to doing renovations to create multiple rental spaces in a home, to owning multiple homes and becoming a millionaire just taking those steps. And one tip that I think would be super important for you to keep in mind is always have an exit strategy. So by that, I mean, in my house where I was living in the apartment, I technically couldn't have subletted it. So I made sure I was there and I was hosting people as guest stay. I don't know if that's technically allowed or not, but I didn't rent to someone without my presence there. And I only allowed my booking calendar to go out like a month at a time, so that if something happened where I couldn't rent anymore, I was able to have a quick exit and just shut down my listing and not have a bunch of cancellations on guests, thereby ruining my host account. When I rented the Arbitrage, I also, same thing, had a month-to-month agreement with the gentleman so that both he or I could terminate our agreement at any time given a 30-day notice, or maybe it was 60 days. Maybe I asked him for a 60-day notice because it would have been too abrupt for me to make changes. And therefore, I also did the listing window where people can book also up to 60 days out at a time. So there was an exit strategy there. And then when I came to buying homes specifically to be a landlord, where I knew that I would go owner occupy it, but eventually I would move out and it would become just an investment property. In those situations, I did my math calculations in terms of affordability based on long-term market rents only. For example, the first Santa Rosa house that I bought where the mortgage was $3,000, I knew that when I moved out, even the 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, before any renovations, at the time that I purchased it, it wouldn't have made that much. It would have made $2,500 a month. But now it definitely, as a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, would be at least $3,000 or $3,500 a month to rent. And I knew that going in that I could afford to live there for the next few years while the rent markets increased. But I also knew that I was doing in conversion and splitting up the units. So I definitely had a lot of exit strategies where if the short-term rental market crashed or I wasn't able to do any furnished rentals at all, even midterm rentals like on Furnished Finder, that the units would still be successful. It would still pay for itself. Even if I don't get a ton of cash flow, I am not going to be in a vulnerable financial position because it would pay for itself and I would build a lot of equity over time. So those are my tips to you. And then the last bit of nugget that I'll share with you is to not put a lot of money down. I did that for, I think, my 5th property. I ended up putting 25% down. We used the seller's credit to also buy down our interest rate as well. And now, having done this so many times, I realized that it is way better to put 5% or 10% down instead, because you can really strategize to use cash flow or other people's rental money to make up for the expenses that are set by having a lower down payment versus trying to save up in advance that huge chunk of money. And when you're talking about $500,000 houses, $700,000 houses, an extra 15 or 10% is a significant amount of money, and it would hold you back from starting your investment journey sooner. So I hope you guys find that helpful. And if you do, or if you want to follow along more in the financial freedom journey, make sure you subscribe, like the video, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about where you're at in today and where you want to go in 2023. All right, I'll see you next week. Bye now.